Hey, go. How are you doing? It's Sarah. I'm here in Toronto, Canada. I'm an astrologer. This is a newsletter for my community. Thank you for your time. This one might be a little bit lengthy today because I'm actually going to read you my newsletter today so that I don't get off track, as is my nature. Okay, today we are talking about the full moon in Aquarius that is happening on Thursday morning. So I think that Wednesday night we should be really enjoying this beautiful fullness of moon, and on Thursday night as well. So 2 nights to consider. Now, the full moon of Aquarius is a curious moon. It's really interesting and complicated. I remember last year at this time we had a full moon lunar eclipse because the nodal axis was in Aquarius and Leo last year. It was really profound for me. I don't know if any of you remember what it was like for you, but I was on a beach in Bali doing a ceremony with two beautiful friends. And I, at that time, called in to me with a deep sincerity, community. And I asked to let go of all of these dark places inside me that were keeping me away from that. And so it is again this time. It is time for us to look at this and to examine how we cohese with our community and with our collective group and with our families and with our friendships, and to ask how we are doing and whether there is anything that is standing in our way of being our most beautiful, authentic self around others. So let's look at the concept of being yourself. It's kind of easy to say, oh, just be yourself, you know? But the problem with just being yourself is that we have really very complicated selves, like very complicated. In fact, most of us have parts of ourselves that, if left to their own devices, behave in ways that are so out of alignment with our highest good. They're very unsavory, in fact. And things that we don't like in ourselves, that sort of when they sit in our energy field and we act from them, they cause reactions like a ripple field, a ripple effect in the field, and they cause reactions from people and they cause reactions from life, and things happen to us. We create karma, we reap what we sow, and we end up creating things that are not necessarily happy or peaceful. These parts of ourselves are called our shadows, and they generally stay there, present in time and space, whether we're aware of them or not, until we're mature enough to deal with them. And deal with them we must. Fortunately for us, life will keep presenting us opportunities to see these parts of ourselves and to bring them into the light and to welcome them back into the fold, the way we would gently discipline a child who has gone astray or who is out of control or is having a tantrum. Because it's not that these parts are bad, they're merely memories or fragments, right? Whether they're from this lifetime or past lifetimes, they're simply pieces of ourselves that are locked in time and space, that were created at some time in our past in order to keep us safe and help us survive in situations that were far beyond our control. Generally in situations in which we felt our security was threatened, so we had to react. We had to freeze. We had to create something that protected us. So here we sit, and we've got a little bit of spite, and we've got a little bit of jealousy, or we've got a little bit of rage, or we have a little bit of shame, or we have a little bit of greed that is hungry under the surface, or we have a part of us that wants to manipulate and get what it wants. Or we have a part of us that is violent and that we can't control and that kind of likes it, you know? Or we have a part of us that is a little bit addicted to being very, very, very sad. And that's kind of part of our identity. So we don't want to let it go. It gets us food, it gets us attention, it gets us love. There are all sorts of ways the shadow presents. None of us like our shadow, trust me. But the shadow is like a little child, a small bit, a little piece. It's not your whole self. And at this time of the archetypal cycle, what we're doing in the Aquarian spirit is to take a look not only at the glory of the Leonine beautiful self, but at all the parts of the self, all the parts, the good parts and the bad parts, and to, like a flock of unattended sheep wandering through the field, shepherd them in and nip at their heels and bark a little bit over here and make sure that all of these parts of ourself get collected so that they can come back home. And we need to bring them back, because only when we bring them home into the central core axis of ourself do we have access to our sovereignty and our truth and our will. Only then are we allowed to actually be who we want to be, not who we are compelled to be because of an unconscious part of ourself that's in control. So religions all over the world speak of morality and virtue and laws and rules and ways we should behave and all of this. And at times, religion over the last several thousand years has been very punitive and very oppressive. And while certainly there are parts of us that need a firm hand, some of us more than others, I mean, that part of the pedophile, for instance, who has an aberrant desire that is clearly harmful to others, or that need to steal, or that compulsion to use an addictive substance, even though the consequences are destroying our family, right? There are parts of us that require severe discipline, but there are also way more parts of us that simply require love and compassion and courage and strength and unity and love, right? That require a firm yet gentle embrace. And this is Aquarius. I love to call Aquarius the border collie of the zodiac. I always use border collie analogies when I'm describing Aquarius. Because while Leo is that inner child or that bounding sheep in the field and that fullness of self and the light and the happy, joyful, free expression, Aquarius is that parent of the self. It's that part of us that understands the complexity of the self and that has compassion for it. It knows our small bits and pieces can get very broken over lifetimes, and that our self, as it gets fragmented off, needs to be reclaimed with love so that we can choose to bring ourselves back together into wholeness and contribute to true healing and true service to the collective consciousness. Because we're all one with the collective. So when we take full responsibility for taking care of ourselves, we are essentially serving everyone. Now, if you for 1 minute think that you're separate, if you for 1 minute think that other people can't feel and can't hear and don't know your dark thoughts and your hidden hate and your shadow spite and your fragmented jealousy or your lust or your desire, if you think that you're alone with those things, you are sorely mistaken. You're just wrong. You're not alone with those things. We can all feel it. We can all see it. We just don't know we can, but we all can because we are all connected. And I wanted to share a personal story about this with you to kind of bring this to light. When I was waking up, having my awakening experience at the age of 21, I had a pretty profound realization of oneness. Now, this wasn't just an intellectual concept for me. I wasn't reading about it in a book, and I actually never picked up a book about spirituality. I was an atheist who didn't believe in any spiritual, I didn't believe in God, I didn't believe in anything magical. I was a skeptic. And I was an academic's daughter, and I was raised by someone who was really critical and really skeptical, and I everything was always wrong, and everything was always like, oh, that's stupid, or whatever it was, like that old academic kind of elitist kind of, very mental constructed reality where you look down upon everything and poo-poo it because you're right. That was kind of what I was raised in. And I love my dad. God bless you, my father. And I'm so grateful that he taught me. And he's certainly changed, and I've changed. But the start of my change was when I had Pluto join the North Node in Sagittarius. And because I was wired like this, I think Source had to really crack me open and to really force my hand and present me with truth in a way that was unrefutable. So I was given like firsthand experiences, and I was given some pretty tremendous gifts, like just thrown at me very quickly, all at once. And I had to then make a choice based on those experiences, which I then knew to be true because I wasn't just learning about them in a book. I was experiencing them. I had to make choices about how I would live my life. And one of the first gifts I was given was the gift of telepathy. And for this really small window of time, it was very brief. It was so profound. There was this there was this room in my mind that was cleared. And this happened when I was with a friend who was instrumental to my awakening. He was a very powerful man, and I really loved him very much. He was a good friend of mine. And he was my very first teacher, although he never would have called himself a teacher because we just hung out. And for some reason, we were both in this place where we could do this with each other. And he instigated this, and it opened in me and it opened in him, and we could have these conversations with each other. And I remember when it happened, it felt like, wow, this is the most natural thing in the world. Of course I remember this. I have always had this ability. I just couldn't remember. And now that I know that I'm here and I can be in this place and I can do this, I'm never going to forget. I remember having this like super optimistic feeling like I'm never going to forget how to do this. It's amazing. We're having like full on telepathic conversations with each other. And then after the opening, it stayed with me for about a week after. And I remember like it blasted me open, it blasted open my heart. And one of the things I learned later in my studies was that you can't open the third eye unless your heart is open. You can't experience that level unless your heart is open, and it really opened my heart. So I was walking through life like this open vessel. I was just like open-heartedly connecting to everybody, and it was like I was in the minefield, and like I could hear, it wasn't like I could hear people's thoughts. It was more like I could see, feel, know how my reality and their realities were totally connected. And I could see, feel, know how all of us were in this field, and how everything that was going on in me was immediately being felt in them, and that everything was going on in them was immediately being felt in me. And it was like being in this echo chamber or something. And it was remarkable. It was really profound. I couldn't hold it. Like, trust me, I didn't want to hold it. It was really like a week. I didn't tell a soul. And then it like gently closed. And I think that's for my benefit because it was way too much for a 21-year-old to handle. I probably had to recover from that for a very long time after. But what it did is it gave me a lesson. It told me that everything in our minds, everything in our heart, and everything in our emotional body can be felt by everyone around us. And in that moment, I dedicated my life to meditation, and I dedicated my life to becoming the best person I could be. Because I knew that controlling my mind was not just a matter of me making my life more tolerable, because my mind was crazy, and it was unbelievable. When I started paying attention to what was going on in there, I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. I just thought it was normal, but no, it was not normal. It was insane. Like, there was so much going on. And so it wasn't just about me, like that was not enough of an impetus. My own well-being was not enough of an impetus to force me to meditate. What got me to do it and to devote the rest of my life to it was that I realized that if I did not, I was going to hurt other people. And for some reason in this lifetime, it is like one of my deepest values is do no harm. And it's something that I take really seriously. I can't, it's like at the root of who I am. Like I have to do no harm. And every time I realize I'm doing harm, I have to make a change, right? It's like I can't live with that. I can't live with a choice that causes harm. It's that's just me. Anyway, so the last few weeks of this Leo season have been really intense for me because it's been bringing up all of these messages have been like kind of coming at me about the ways that I've become lazy or have lost my way when it comes to making sure that I am immaculate in my alignment so that I do no harm. And I've been getting relentlessly tested and pushed and triggered. And truly, I have lost so much that mattered to me in the last few weeks. And it has been so humbling. And I had no choice but to allow each of these moments to just teach me how to be better and to bring me deeper and deeper into a state of humility and sincerity. And the deeper I would go into the humility, while excruciatingly painful, the more aware I become of this capacity to love that is more, I guess it's more peaceful and more sincere and more humble and more clear and more truthful. So there you go. I think that's what it's like to have Uranus in your 5th house. Because my deepest lessons, my deepest trauma in my life, and my deepest intuitive healing happens all in the archetype of Leo, all in the Leonin archetype of myself and who I am and how I present into the world so that I can do no harm, right? And so that I can be pure. So it's been a pretty intense few weeks for me. And I don't know if it's been happening for you. I don't know what's been happening for you. Maybe you guys have been just like rocking the cottages and having the greatest time and enjoying the sunlight and partying. But I'm guessing that at some point in the last 2 weeks, you guys have been coming up against something around yourself and around how you bring that self out to others and around how you bump up against the parts of yourself that are not in authenticity, so that are broken. Because at this full moon, what we're doing is the archetype is bringing us into a state of mental awareness so that we can see the disparate parts of us that have become dislodged or that have broken off, so that we can cohese them and bring them back into the fold. Because this one experience from my earlier years when I was young taught me this fundamental lesson, and that is that we are all part of this collective, and that in order to contribute to the betterment of humanity and to the wholeness and health of each other, we have to take responsibility for ourselves, for being the best self that we are possibly capable of being. And that when we take the time to actually do that really sincerely, like being very, very, very honest, when we take the time to do that and to prioritize that, it's not selfish. Okay, it's not selfish. It's actually quite an act of selflessness, especially when we realize that the more beautiful and authentic and filled with love our self can be, the more we are contributing to the love and the betterment and the upliftment of others who we have contact with, because we're connected. We are all one. And that's it. So that's the full moon right now. It's exploring the mental dimension of self, like the part of ourself that can objectively see who we are and that can make choices about who we want to be, and that can usher in and collect the little sheep who've gone astray in a gentle yet firm way. So over the next couple days, I guess over the next day and a half until that full moon, I thought to leave you with a few questions that you might consider in your ecosystem. The first one would be, what part of me keeps me away from truly, generously loving other people? So you might first ask yourself, what does it feel like to generously love another person? Do I even know what that is like? And if you don't, perhaps inquiring about that would be a good place to start. And if you do know what that's like, perhaps you generously love your husband or your child. Perhaps you generously love your best friend. What is preventing you from generously loving everyone, even the people who trigger you, even the people you don't like? It's that place that you want to bump up against in the next day and a half and explore, because that's your shadow. And that part that prevents you from generously loving with the Leon heart, with the heart of the sun, is the part that you want to create a dialogue with. So when it arises, you say, where does this part live in my body? How can I create a conversation with it that is honest, so I can really look it in the eye and see it for what it is? Because the most important thing when doing shadow work is utter honesty. If you need a friend to witness you, if you need someone outside of yourself to help you, just give yourself permission to create any environment you need so that you can be very, very honest with yourself. And the next question that you ask is, am I ready to hold a space for that part that keeps me from loving generously? Am I ready to take responsibility for it and to allow it to feel what it feels and to give it full permission, 100%, to give it its feelings, to give it its reality, to let it have its truth, and to simultaneously choose to take control of it like a good parent and to bring it into line, to bring it in line, like to discipline it, to bring it in, to make a decision. Because it's really a moment to moment thing with some of these parts of ourselves. I know it is with me. Like some of these parts that I started to work on last summer and that have just now like come back up in the last couple weeks. Some of these parts were not very kind and they didn't want to let go. They really liked being who they were, and they really like being alone. And they really like being dark. And that is often the case with the shadow. Sometimes it's been serving a very important need for us. It's been serving us so well that it doesn't want to let go. So you have to ask yourself quite honestly whether it's time, whether you're ready to let it go, and have compassion for yourself if you're not. But I think the first step is honesty and seeing it. And then the second step is to gently make a choice and take control and be the parent and be the Aquarian. And one by one, we call in the bits. One by one, we pull in the sheep. And one by one, we come home. And bit by bit, we contribute that wholeness that we are to the group, to the wholeness that is all of us. And so the final question to leave you with is, when you go into a state of generous love to others from a state of wholeness, what happens? What is the impact on the life around you? Do you start to notice a change? Because I really do. I really notice a change. Like, it is profound. The place that you come from, it within yourself directly impacts the reality around you. And you are really the one who's in charge and in control of creating the reactions that you get to some extent. And we're not going overboard. I'm not one who believes that the Jews created what they got at the Holocaust and that a child creates the sexual abuse that they suffer. I don't believe that, actually. I really don't. But on an energetic level, on a personal karmic level, I do believe that we reap what we sow, and that our self and the amount that we're willing to take responsibility for ourselves and to lift ourselves into our higher archetype and our higher potential, it does define the quality of life that we experience. So there you go. I will leave you with that. And as you observe over the next few days, as I surely will be, and as you may already have been doing, you will have something to celebrate on Wednesday and Thursday's full moon. You will have something to maybe let go of. And you may be able to really do some good work for yourself that will have an impact on your life and on the lives of all of us. So thank you for your time. And we'll see you again. Bye.